I was off that day. So I was at home, like many of you, watching the events unfold on television. So I knew I had to get in right away. New York City Police Department and the fire department. An emergency like this that happens is a thing called an immediate recall. So you know you have to come in, no matter where you work. So now I live in a suburb of New York City, in Long Island, New York. It's about 40 miles from here, if you will. And one of the first odd things about that day is that all the roads into the city were shut down. Once you got to the city line from either Westchester or Nassau County, Suffolk County, nobody was allowed in. So you had to come on in. I had my shield out my window. At the time, I had a 92 Saturn, not really a police-looking car. And, you know, contrary to popular belief, most police officers don't have bubbles in their car that they throw on top. That, you know, you have a car, usually a nondescript old clunker that you can get to and from work to, that if it got damaged, you wouldn't care. So I found that eerie. You know, if you've been around New York City, there's always traffic. So going in on my ride in, I had a question. I was in the detective bureau, and I was a supervisor in the detective bureau, and my job is to supervise detectives that investigate crimes that have usually already happened or just happened. So I knew I wasn't going to be doing that day. So I said to myself, what am I going to do? What is my job going to be when I get in, and what can I do? So on my ride in, which seemed extra long, believe it or not, I went back to when I first came on the job as a rookie officer, and I was assigned to Coney Island, Brooklyn, which is a little through the tunnel here, and it's a beach area, if many of you know. And when I first came on the job, you work in a beach area, one of the biggest calls you get is lost children. Always lost children on the beach. So I would get the kids, and they'd be very upset at the time, and I would say, hey, you're not lost, you're found. You're right here with me. It's your parents that are lost, so we have to find them. So the kids would calm down, and they would be able to at least tell me what mommy or daddy were wearing, and we would usually find them, and everybody was happy. Because one of the greatest things you could do as a police officer is bring somebody home to their family. That's the most precious thing that they have. So that's when it hit me, and I knew what I was going to do. I knew we potentially might have had 10,000 people missing from this incident. And I knew that we were going to have to find them and bring them home. And that's when I knew I was going to go work at the morgue. Because contrary to popular belief, we are not CSI, everything you see on TV. There's no magical, you put a drop of blood in, you find the person's address, their name, their dog. It's not how it works. It's a lot of hard work to find somebody, and it's a lot of hard work to bring them home. And I knew we had a great task at hand. I knew that there was potentially 10,000 people missing at the time, but I knew I was going to find everybody, and I was going to bring everybody home. I knew I was really good at my job. I knew that I had all the resources of the NYPD at my disposal, and that we were going to find everybody. We started working right away. I don't know if people have been through the museums and have seen the pictures, or you saw it on television when it happened. It's nothing like what you see in the pictures or what you saw on television. Amplify that 10 times. When they say trying to find a needle in a haystack, that would have been a little bit easier. But we started working right away. We started making recoveries right away, identifications right away, and notifications right away. One of the hardest things you could do is notify somebody that, you know, you found their loved one. And at that time, even though it was a good thing that we found somebody, it's still a very hard thing to do, to notify the family, yep, we found them, but they're not with us anymore. One of the things that stands out with making those notifications was I had the medical examiner's office had called the family, said we have found the remains of your loved one, and I had a phone call come in from a very young female officer who told me, listen, Sarge, my aunt got a call that they found my uncle, and I'm going to come down with her to the medical examiner's office, but they didn't tell her what they found. So at that point, I said to her, well, if you're the one who's going to be coming down with her, you're going to have to be her strength, and you're going to have to help her through this. And if you really want, are you really sure you want to know from me what that is? She's like, yes, yes. I said, okay. And that's when I told her that we had recovered her uncle's arm and his hand, and that we had identified him through his fingerprints. So there was a long pause on the phone, and I was like, officer, are you still with me? And she came to, I said, you have to be very strong, because you're the one who's going to lead your family through this whole process. And it might not just be one phone call you get. We recovered over 19,000 remains. So a second phone call, a fifth phone call, a 10th phone call could very well happen. So that was one tough, a rewarding thing that you got to bring somebody home to their family, but a tough thing that, you had to make that notification. So as the days went by, I worked at the morgue from September 11th until April the following year. And as the days and weeks went by, another thing that stands out for me is we got a lot of lists of people who was working at the Trade Center that day and what companies, what fire department companies, police department, Marsh and McLennan, all the different companies that worked in the two buildings. And in my desk, I had several lists. One of the hardest things for me when I come down here to the memorial is looking at the memorial pools and all the names that are on the memorial pools, because I have seen those names more than once. Every one of them is familiar to me. Some I know that I was able to tell a family we found them, and some I haven't. So we tried to gather as much information on the people who were missing, and that's when things started to get a little more personal for me. Not just that I lost colleagues and friends and family friends, but we would have all the people come down to tell us anything unique. Besides collecting DNA from people to try to identify their family members, we also said anything that's unique to them. So that's when it started getting tough. It was, Connie, Pam, she had really short spiky hair, and it was platinum blonde, or it was my twin brother, or he has a Yosemite Sam tattoo on his hip. And all these little bits of information that I would get, I would put on those yellow sticky notes, the little yellow sticky notes you get, and I would put them on the wall behind me. And after a while, that wall was pretty much getting filled. And I was seeing, although I was here, I would see the impact every day when I came in, because my wall was filled with yellow sticky notes. So a good day for me was when I came in one day and I was able to take one of those yellow sticky notes off the wall because we had found somebody. Bad days were that they weren't coming off the wall too quickly anyway. But when I started realizing the enormity of our task of trying to bring everybody home was probably in about March of the following time. I had a friend who was a detective who lost her brother. He was a firefighter. And she would come in every week or so and say, Connie, did you, find anybody in his rescue company? Did you find anything, of him? And I would always have to tell her, no, not yet. We're still looking. We're still looking. So it was one day when she came in, and because she had heard that they had recovered some firefighter remains, and of course asked if it was her brother or brother's company. And I had to tell her, I said, you know what? We may never find your brother. Because then it was hitting me, the enormity that all these sticky notes were still on the wall. And a lot of people, it was slowing down of us making notifications. It was also at that time that I realized that the people we lost here aren't really lost. We're lost. The people who are still here, the family members, the first responders, and the people who were trying to find everybody to bring them home. So I tell my story so that everyone who comes here doesn't forget, not only the people we lost that day, but the people who are still here and who still might be lost. So I thank you for coming and listening.